Good morning. My name is Susan Johnson, and I am the membership secretary for the International Wizard of Oz Club. I'd like to thank you for joining me this morning for another story from Oziana. This is the publication of the Wizard of Oz Club, the annual publication, and it is original stories and poems and artwork by our members. The story I'm going to read you this morning is by Stephen Teller, and this is the only story that we know of that Stephen Teller ever submitted to Oziana. Stephen Teller is a very long-time member of the club. He's been a member since the mid-60s. His father was a member before him, and they both attended early conventions in Castle Park with some of the original Baum family. The title of the story is The Trouble with the Magic Belt, and it is from the 2009 issue of Oziana. The trouble with the magic belt is that it's just too powerful, declared J. Relkin to assorted listeners as they sat in the hotel lobby one hot summer evening in the Oz Club convention. I mean, there are no limits to what it can do. Whenever there is any trouble in Oz, all Ozmen need to do is get the belt and wish the trouble away. The only thing that prevents this from happening all the time is that the characters seem to forget the power of the belt from book to book. It isn't really true that the belt has no restrictions, rebutted Richard Myers, another longtime attendee at these conventions. In Ozma of Oz, a known captain clearly states that it doesn't work on wood. True, but that's contradicted in Lost Princess when Dorothy uses it to turn the sawhorse into a potato masher. Also, in Lost Princess, returned Myers, Dorothy describes an elaborate process to make the belt grant wishes, which isn't mentioned anywhere else. Indeed, normally there are no restrictions put on its powers. The only reason it hasn't destroyed Oz utterly is that the people who steal it either don't know its powers or are too busy boasting that it gets stolen back from them. Yes, inserted Phyllis Garr, Oz villains are like James Bond villains. They want to crow like Peter Pan rather than act when they get the chance. That's the point, Relkin continued. The belt gets stolen so many times, especially in the later books, that it becomes almost a cliche. I think Oz would have been better off if the magic belt had never existed, or had been destroyed, or had been forgotten about, like the other magical objects that are never mentioned after the book they appear in. On the edge of the group gathered in the lobby was Sturl Neffel. This was his first Oz convention, and he was enjoying it thoroughly. He found the talks and entertainment fascinating, the quizzes impossible, the auction budget destroying, and the parties mind-numbing. But his favorite parts of the convention were the bull sessions that seemed to fill every spare minute. As a newcomer, he was reluctant to enter the discussion, but he was becoming addicted to listening to them. Returning home to Arkham, Sturl could not forget the conventioneer's discussion of the magic belt. Looking through his collection of Oz books, he decided that Relkin was right. The magic belt seemed to be stolen so often it could be called the Ozian second base. This was not only true in the regular Oz books, but even more true in the Oz pastiches that Sturl had been acquiring from his friends. Perhaps Oz would be better off without that contraption. Certainly, Oz writers would. During the months that followed, this thought preyed on Sturl's mind. He felt compelled to do something about it and so make his mark in Oz. He worked out a way to accomplish his ends, but was far from certain how to make that plan work. Walt Disney's Pinocchio was one of his favorite movies. Sturl wished upon a star for 2 weeks running, asking to be transported to Oz overnight. But every morning he awoke in his own bed in Arkham. He rigged up a photosensitive window shutter with the hope of trapping a shadow and reciting fairy tales aloud nightly, but all it caught was a bad sore throat, not Peter Pan. One day, while exploring an old junk shop in Arkham, Sturl discovered a battered, ancient brass lamp. Following his instincts, he purchased it, $5.49 plus tax, and brought it home, feeling somewhat of a fool. He carefully rubbed the lamp with a soft cloth. To his complete delight, a cloud of smoke arose from the lamp and coalesced into an enormous genie. As you have rubbed the magic lamp, the genie intoned in an antique Eastern accent, I am required to grant you one wish. Let me warn you that you are permitted only one wish, and I will obey it if it is in my power. However, if you wish for something outside of my power, you're just out of luck. Take me to the land of Oz, declared Sturl. I'm sorry, I'm an Arabian Nights genie, and Oz is a whole different fairy universe. This wish is not in my power to grant. For your benefit, I will add, although this is not in my contract, that neither wishing stars nor fairy dust will serve your purpose. Each fantasy universe is ruled by its own magic. Better luck next time. Oh, gee, poor Sturl. If there is a next time. With that, the genie vanished in a cloud of smoke, with no amount of rubbing could bring him back out of the lamp. Sturl Neppel was annoyed that his request had been denied, and even more that he had wasted a perfectly good wish. He determined to peruse the Oz books in an attempt to find a legitimate way to get to Oz. Most of the ways used in the book seemed totally out of his reach. Wishing sand from Wish Way was certainly not available to him, even in Arkham junk stores. Cyclones and storms at sea were too unpredictable and capricious to be of use. There was no way of determining how a fall through the Earth's crust might take him to Oz, like Benny and balloon birds. Collapsible kites and merry-go-round rings were just not to be found. He must have repeated udge budge, go to mudge, udger budger, I'm a mudger 100 times without getting out of Arkham. Finally, Sturl had to admit to his chagrin that the method used more than any other to transport people from Oz was, ironically, the magic belt. He carefully studied the texts and pictures in Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz and the Emerald City of Oz and subjected them to computer analysis and enhancement. At last, he was ready to try his experiment. In both books, it was stated that Ozma looked in her magic picture at 4 o'clock every day. And if Dorothy made a secret sign, Ozma would use her magic to bring Dorothy to Oz. It was not clear to Sturl just what 4 o'clock was in Central Daylight Saving Time, or Mountain Standard Time for that matter. Part of Kansas is in the Mountain Time Zone. What time zone was the Cave of the Dragonettes in anyway? Did Oz have its own time zone? And what relationship was Domestic Standard Time to Eastern Standard Time? Finally, Sturl decided that he must not take any chances. Every hour, 24 hours a day, he made the secret sign as he determined it from the 2 books. This went on for 3 weeks, in which he got little sleep. Then at 4 p.m. one morning, sleep deprivation does strange things to the mind. A wondrous thing happened. Sturl felt himself falling into a trance-like state. He could feel the colors swirling around him, and the music of the universe impressed itself upon his taste buds. When Sturl recovered his equilibrium, he found himself in a beautiful throne room. Seated on the throne before him was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had scarlet poppies over her ears. She carried a scepter topped with an O surrounding a Z and had about her waist a broad jewel-studded belt. Next to her was a statuesque woman in a long red dress, her beautiful red hair bound up in a snood. The girl on the throne spoke to Sturl. I'm Princess Ozma, ruler of all Oz, and this is Glenda, my most powerful advisor. Glenda has reported to me that according to her great book of records, you have been making Dorothy's secret sign hourly for weeks. After much consultation, we decided to bring you to Oz to explain your behavior. I am Sterl Nepple, the visitor choked out. Although I've never been to Oz before, I've spent a lot of time studying your history and ways. I have an unusual request to make of you. What do you want from me, asked Ozma? My request is to be allowed to make one wish in a rather complicated one using the magic belt, replied Sterl. You must know I will not allow anything to be done to harm any living thing. I swear that the wish I want to make will harm no one in Oz or elsewhere. Not only that, but the wish will produce no personal benefit for myself or anyone. I know it will have the effect of protecting Oz from harm. If you wish, I will declare all this while holding Glinda's magic pearl. Or you could put a restriction on the belt that my wish would not be granted if it would cause anyone harm or would be to my personal gain. If you can think of any other safeguards other than my telling you what the wish is, I will satisfy them. Glinda, who had been carefully observing Sterl all the time he had been talking, said to Ozma, "This young man is speaking honestly. My magic can detect no malice or selfishness in his being here. Of course, it would do no harm to follow his suggestion about putting the restriction he suggested on the belt." On Glinda's advice, I will grant your request, Ozma declared after a pause, but I know that you may have only one use of the belt. And after that, you will be transported back to America and never return to Oz. That is all I ask, replied Sterl. In fact, I would have put that into my wish. Then, declared the Queen of Oz, standing up and grasping the belt, you may use the belt. Magic belt, grant the wish that Sterl Nepple will make upon you, only if it will result in harm to no living being. As soon as he had made the wish and returned the belt to me, send him back to America. She removed the magic belt and handed it to Sterl, who fastened it around his own waist. Do not grant my wish, he began, until I have said the word now, twice in a row. I wish the magic belt to lose all its magical powers immediately after it has returned me to America, and for all memory of its powers to be removed from everyone, human, fairy, gnome, or other. Now. Sterl removed the belt and handed it to Ozma, who remarked, "That is a most powerful belt. Thank you." Sterl felt himself being whisked away and became filled with a strange kind of dizziness. All sense of specific time or place became blurred. Somewhere in his head, he could hear voices that gradually became clear. At last, he could distinguish one of the voices as belonging to Jay Relkin. The problem with Ozma's magic belt, Jay was saying, is that it is just too powerful. The end. So what do you think happened? What do you think happened after everyone forgot about the power of the magic belt? Stephen Teller, the author of this story, lives in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and he has a large collection of Oz works, particularly Russian editions of The Wizard of Oz. I hope that you have enjoyed this story this morning, and you will join us another time for another story from Oziana, the original publication of the Wizard of Oz Club, by its members, its artists, and its poets. Thank you very much.